fireplace.
Like and subscribe to Dinah Walsh channel. Oh yeah. Let's do this.
But otherwise, it
Let's get to 10,000 likes, guys. And subscribe. Oh,
was expected starting tonight. By 5, I was already starting to notice it getting worse outside. I sat on the couch and turned on a different channel. Around 7 though, I could hear wind slamming against the house, and it really did sound like there was a blizzard. I got up and went to the window facing the backyard to see how it looked outside. At first, all I saw was snow rushing to the ground, with almost no visibility. But then I saw something else. A figure walking through my backyard. My backyard was pretty big and didn't have a fence, so it wouldn't have
that's freaky, scary stuff, huh? One more of this, guys. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below.
before the snow and darkness took over any sight I had of them. I stayed by the window for a minute, trying to catch one more look and figure out what they were doing, but I didn't see anything. I was honestly scared for them, but also couldn't see why they'd be out there at all. The end of my yard that they were walking to led to a road, but it wouldn't get them anywhere for miles, which was not doable on foot. I went back to the TV, but I still couldn't help thinking about it. And only 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. I went over and cracked it open. It was a man in a heavy winter jacket. His nose was bright red, and his face was pale white, like he'd been out in the cold for a while. I couldn't know if this was the same person I'd seen in my backyard, but my immediate guess was that it was. "How can I help you?" I asked. The man let out a humble smile and spoke through shaking teeth that he was waiting for a ride to pick him up, and asked if he could stay in my house for a few minutes to shelter from the cold just until the ride got here. I took a moment to respond because I actually considered it, given the state of the weather. It's easy to say that under no circumstance would you let a random man inside your house, but when they're practically freezing to death on your doorstep and asking for your help, the answer on what to do isn't as black and white. I told him he could wait on my porch, which had an overhang that blocked the snow, and offered to give him an old jacket of mine if he needed it. The man didn't look too happy, but just nodded and went off to the side and sat on the chair I had out there. I closed and locked the door, then went upstairs to grab my old jacket. It was way too big for me and was in horrible condition, but obviously that shouldn't matter in this kind of scenario. I picked it up and walked downstairs, about to unlock the door and open it, but something stopped me just a moment before. I don't know what it was, but it made me hesitate. I leaned over and looked through the peephole. The man was now standing right up against the door with his hand on the handle, like he was preparing to push it open.
That is crazy. Looks freaky, man.
Increasing as I took a couple steps back and quietly pulled my phone out to dial 911. As I whispered into the phone, I just stared at the door with wide eyes, knowing what was waiting for me on the other side. Once the police said they were on their way, I slowly crept over and looked out again. The man wasn't there, not on my porch or anywhere in my front yard.
He's not gonna be there. He's gone. He's well gone.
That I had called the police. Nothing else was found that night, and no signs of him ever showed up again. What he would have done if I had opened the door, I can't be sure of, but hopefully he never comes back. This was last year. It was late November, and this was the first snowfall of the season. It wasn't
There's another one, guys. The Creepy Home Alone horror story. Oh, yeah.
around 8, and by then the snow had already started. I heated up some leftover pizza and stayed downstairs for a couple hours. Around 10, I went upstairs to my bedroom, sitting at my desk with my laptop. Before I could even open up something to watch, I heard something right above me. It sounded like a thud in the ceiling. I thought it was likely the snow weighing down on the roof and was probably nothing to be concerned about. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned at all though. This was my first winter at this house, and it wasn't in the best shape, so part of me was a little worried about any possible leaks or other problems. I tried to not think about it too much and continued looking for something to watch, but then it happened again. A thud resonating through the ceiling. I looked up, and the thuds continued, sounding almost in a straight line across the ceiling. I was genuinely worried now. I got up and grabbed my winter jacket, then hurried out the front door and looked up at the roof. Unexpectedly, the side of the roof that my bedroom was under, there was no snow on it. It had all slid off and fell into a pile in front of the house. I looked at the other side of the roof, and the snow was still there. I then looked at my neighbors' homes, and all of them still had snow sitting on their roofs, like normal. The way the snow had fallen off just one side of my roof didn't seem natural, like something was either wrong with my roof, or something else had made this happen. Probably whatever those thuds were that I was hearing. With no more answers to find outside, and my whole body starting to shiver from the cold, I walked back to the front door. I opened it and hurried inside, stomping my boots on the doormat. When I looked up though, my heart almost stopped. There were puddles of water going across the hallway. I stayed still and looked around, seeing water going through the living room and even up the stairs next to me. It only took me a second to see a boot print in one of the puddles, and I immediately turned right back around and headed out the door. I stood by the road and called the police, shivering as I tried to tell them my situation. About 30 seconds into the call, I saw something move past one of the windows in my bedroom, and moments later, a figure stood behind the glass, looking down at me. They only stayed for a second, then backed away. I didn't see anything else the rest of the time that I waited for the police. As I was waiting though, I put together most of the pieces in my mind. Someone had made it up on the roof, making the snow fall as they walked across. There were several windows they could have gotten in from that I honestly had no idea if they were locked or not. When police arrived, they didn't find the intruder inside anymore, but they basically confirmed my theory. There were multiple trees going over top my house that anyone could easily climb, and with the windows being accessible, it made for an easy target. At least, the officers think that that's the reason they broke in, just because I was an easy target. Nothing was missing though, and the way the shoe prints went through the whole house felt eerily like them looking for me.
This is so freaky, guys.
Exact time they got in through the window. If I was any later, I would have been face to face with them, or if I'd gone back inside sooner, they might have not left tracks through the house yet for me to immediately notice. It's been nearly an entire year since this, and so far, nothing else has happened. Maybe it was just a one-time attempt, but I don't think I'll ever feel safe with all the uncertainties of what happened that night. This was last.
What this man did.
When I was 8 years old, I used to live in my grandma's house in Ecuador. Many of the neighbors would...
Here's another one. A childhood horror story, guys.
The first thing that would come to our head...
Like and subscribe to Danny Watch channel. If you want more of these, let me know. Comments down below.
that there was someone breaking in. They were sure that our house was haunted. Everyone even refused to come inside for parties or any other special occasion. They told us to get a priest and to get rid of any bad spirits. We didn't take their warnings as something important because my parents don't believe in those kinds of things. Although I would hear someone going up the stairs at night, our stairs were really old, so they would make a loud sound when someone would step on them. However, when I checked, there was nothing. I would just run to my bed and cover my head with the sheets until I fell asleep. One night, someone started knocking on the door really hard and screaming. We got really scared as it was 12:30 a.m. and everyone was asleep by then in our neighborhood. It was extremely rare that someone would be up at that time. My dad took his shotgun and told my mom and me to stay in my room and not move. I was scared for my dad's safety, but I felt relieved when my dad said my neighbor's name He informed us that a water pipe had broke in our backyard and the water was spraying his house and broke one of his windows. He was nice about the situation and even said he'd help us fix the pipe. My dad got the shovels, as the pipes were underground, and we had to dig to see what was wrong and how we could fix it. As we started digging, they realized that they needed other materials, and they went to get it, leaving me alone in the backyard. There was barely any light back there. The only source of light we had was the moon.
This is so freaky, guys.
House. I was pissed off. I mean, how could they leave an 8-year-old boy there by himself in the dark? But I didn't say anything about it. About 10 minutes had gone by since they left, and I was wondering what was taking them so long. They were only getting some materials after all. But as I was going to go back inside, I saw something moving really fast at the corner of my eye. I froze. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. All I could do was move my eyes. I started to freak out, looking around to see what the hell was running around me. I didn't see anything. It was as if there was nothing there at all. But then I looked to my right, and I saw something that haunts me to this very day. It was a demon, in my opinion. It was so tall, around 7 or 8 feet tall. It had long, skinny legs with a really buff body. It also had very long spiral horns, and his eyes shined in the dark. I still couldn't move. The thing ran by me, looked at me, but it didn't do anything to me. It just looked at me. It could have been a goat or a sheep. I've never seen one so big or one that walks on 2 legs like a human. It ran, and I hid behind a big tree by my neighbor's house. Finally, I could move. I yelled at the top of my lungs while crying hysterically. My dad came running with his shotgun in hand and asked me what was wrong. I explained what I saw to him, but he didn't believe me, nor did my mom. But someone did. My neighbor told me that he thought nothing happened to me because I'm a kid. As time passed, I slowly got over it. I moved from that house and moved to New York. My grandparents sold the house and I left.
Don't blame me for moving there.
However, that's not where this story ends. In my sophomore year in high school, I had a nightmare. The thing that I saw that night was in it this time. I could only see its head as it was hiding behind the big tree. He said 3 words that'll haunt me until my time comes. It said, "You can't hide." I woke up from my nightmare and headed to school. While in school, at around 12:30 p.m., there was an announcement. A classmate of mine had been killed in front of my school by a car without brakes. I turned pale as I thought my nightmare may have something to do with the incident. I was scared and even went home early. I told my parents about it, but this time they took me to a priest and he said he'd give me something in 3 days. Every single day I had the same nightmare until my priest gave me a blessed cross, and I haven't had any nightmares about the thing anymore. However, every night I sleep with the covers over my head. Call me a coward or anything you want, but the thing still hasn't left my mind. Those 3 words haunt me till this day, making me wonder when I will forget or move on from the thing.
What this man did was truly terrifying. If you saw this man dancing late at night, you are in great trouble. He is the Smiling Man. On a cold October night in 2010 in Washington,
Looks so freaking nice.
late, after studying at a friend's house, the streets were unusually quiet. As Emily passed under a flickering streetlight, she noticed someone up ahead. It was a man, moving oddly, as if dancing in slow motion. As she got closer, she saw his face. The man was smiling, an unnaturally wide, frozen grin that stretched across his face. Feeling uneasy, Emily crossed the street and quickened her pace. Suddenly, the Smiling Man stopped dancing. He began walking toward her. She tried to stay calm, but he started following her. The faster she walked, the faster he followed, his eerie smile never fading. Panicked, Emily broke into a run. She glanced back once and saw him chasing her, his grin.
Oh my God, that was so scary now.
She reached her apartment, slamming the door and locking it behind her. Though she never saw him again, Emily could never forget the haunting figure of the smiling man that night. If you saw this man,
If you see this man, you need to run and never look back. In the eerie town of Blue Moon,
I saw something like that, I'd definitely run.
owner named Cletus Sanders. His motel, once bustling with life, now stood in desolation, haunted by rumors and Cletus's own unsettling presence. Guests who dared to check in never checked out, vanishing without a trace. Some claim to have seen eyes peering through secret holes in their rooms. Cletus, once known as a kind-hearted man, underwent a drastic transformation after acquiring the motel. His appearance mirrored the darkness that consumed him. Only the desperate sought refuge within its walls, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. One fateful night, a weary traveler took shelter in one of the motel's rooms. As he lay in bed, a noise from beneath jolted him awake. Curiosity led him to peer under the bed, only to be met with Cletus's sinister grin staring back at him. Panic engulfed the visitor as he fled, with Cletus giving chase down the dimly lit corridor. Sadly, the guest became another unfortunate victim. If you see this man, you
will never move to.
I went on a vacation to Serbia last month. It was a solo trip and I found a pretty good deal on a hotel room. It was pretty chill in the beginning, honestly. I spent most of my time in the room surfing the internet when I wasn't out sightseeing. It was there that I came across a rumor going viral about a phenomenon called the Dancing Lady, who terrorizes people at night. I was extremely skeptical, but I decided I would check it out to see if it was true later that night. I had brought my camera with me, so I figured I would record everything I saw for proof. For the rest of the day, I got a little antsy while I waited for the sun to go down, and for it to be late enough for me to explore. I was sure that none of the rumors were true, but I still felt pretty nervous about going out that late at night. I killed time by watching TV, and picking at a little hole in the couch chair until it was time. When it was finally dark enough, I grabbed my camera and headed out. I then started walking the streets of Serbia, looking for any evidence of this supposed dancing lady. It was around 1 or 2 a.m. and completely deserted. There was nothing around. I guess everyone was asleep by that point. It was practically pitch black too. The only light was from the street lamps and the reflective light shining from the moon in the sky. I felt a little uneasy as I was in a different country and I didn't know what to expect. I started feeling like my paranoia was getting to me, like I was being watched. For a second, I thought about turning back, but I decided to go through with it because I was sure that it was all in my head. As I walked around the area with my camera, I didn't see a thing. I was startled by a few rats at one point, but other than that, I was apparently the only living thing out there at that time of night. After a couple hours, I was ready to call it a night, but that's when I saw a figure ahead of me. I couldn't make out who or what this figure was. All I saw was that it was moving awkwardly. I started to move in a little closer and get a better glance at this thing. I then got a little closer, and then a little more closer, until I could make out that the figure was some woman dancing like a lunatic. If I had to describe it, I would say that it looked like someone vomiting while flailing their arms wildly. It was like no dancing that I had ever seen before. The movements were jerky and random, and it didn't look fully human. I got even closer, and by this point I was totally mesmerized by this woman. I began to film her, scared out of my mind at the idea that this could be the woman that everyone was talking about. Then she slowly turned around to face me. That's when I was greeted by the scariest face I had ever seen. She was giving me this giant, terrifying smile that made her look like some sort of demon. I was scared out of my mind and felt frozen to the spot where I stood. The woman slowly moved towards me. Then she suddenly
Scammers so bad.
winced at the sheer volume of it. She looked me dead in the eyes, and with the same horrifying smile on her face, she said,
Your mother's soul is mine.
She then pulled knives out of nowhere and began to run straight at me. I decided to get the hell out of there and run as fast as I could in the opposite direction. I could hear her chasing me, and I forced myself to go even faster. I ran non-stop for what felt like forever. I finally made it to my hotel and ran inside. I didn't stop until I was in my room with the door locked behind me. I looked out of the window to see if the woman had followed me there, but I saw nothing. The street was empty. I watched the footage from my camera to make sure that I wasn't going crazy, but it was all there. I was still amazed, but also creeped the hell out. It just looked so unnatural. The scream was still ringing in my ears. I decided to go to bed to try to sleep it off. Later that night, I was still awake. I had been tossing and turning all night. I couldn't get what the woman had said about my mother out of my mind. Her soul was hers? What the hell did that even mean? I decided to call my mom despite it being 4:30 in the morning. I just needed to be sure she was okay. But when I called her, I heard the most shocking thing ever. My mom picked up and started crying like a maniac.
Mom, what is it? What's wrong? Hello, sir. Please open the door. We have important news that we need to disclose to you. Hello, sir. You need to answer the door or we're gonna have to open it ourselves. Sir, are you all right? I'm so sorry, but your father just called and said he's been trying to get in touch with you. Your mother has passed away unexpectedly. I'm so sorry for your loss. No! Why? Why? It's okay, sir. You're gonna be all right.
This is so sad.
Story was inspired by an incident that happened to a Serbian man who claimed to embark on his own investigation when hearing about others' encounters with strange phenomenon. Upon his investigation, he brought a camera out and ventured out into the streets of Serbia. A woman who appeared to be dancing in the same peculiar manner as portrayed online. Upon realizing his presence, the woman then shouted at the man, saying something in the lines of, "Your mother's soul is mine." Frightened, the man immediately left the scene and stayed put in his hotel room. Since then, the woman has caused a frenzy amongst the online world, triggering a surge in searches for additional information. I went
on June 4th of 2024.
It was approaching the end of summer, and my friends and I wanted to do some cool, mischievous things before going back to school. So, we had the genius idea one night to sneak into a nearby community pool. It was actually only a couple blocks away. It's right smack in the middle of a residential area, so instead of sitting on a main road or something, it actually just sat around a bunch of houses on a quiet road. During a hot day, the little parking lot would be full and the spot would be bustling. But at 1 in the morning, the place was of course dead.
This is going to be the last video, guys. Like and subscribe and comment down below if you would like more.
Way was to get in through the side. We snuck into the backyard of a neighboring house and hopped the fence over to the pool. It was as easy as that. The four of us took off our shirts and jumped into the pool, which in retrospect wasn't smart, since any of the neighbors could have heard the splashes and just called the police. But we were dumb high schoolers. It was very, very dark within that whole enclosing. This pool had no lights, which is why it closed at sunset. James, Courtney, and Alyssa were on the other side of the pool, as I was just kind of doing my own thing at first, swimming around and getting my face wet. I saw Alyssa get out of the pool shortly after and run away. I swam over to see what was going on. She was just going to the water fountain, though. The three of us just bopped around in the water for a bit, and eventually we heard Alyssa jump back into the pool from the other side. It was too dark to see much more than her black hair covering her face. But just then we heard Alyssa playfully call something to us as she was walking back to the pool. The three of us in the pool looked at each other. I know they were doing the same thing as me, counting heads. There were 3 of us on this side of the pool, and here came Alyssa walking over to our side. So who was that on the other side? Alyssa got in, but the 3 of us were distracted, looking at the head bopping around the water across the pool. James said across the pool, "Who is that?" Not even 2 seconds later, the head went underwater and disappeared from view. We took this time to whisper to each other, mostly things like, what should we do? What if that's security? And should we run? Suddenly I felt something grab my leg with force and tried pulling me down into the water. I kicked, splashed, and yelled for help. James came over to pull me out of the pool, while the girls were already running for it, screaming. It wasn't until I got to the
Girls get out of.
was released and I was free. We hopped the same fence we climbed over to get in and ran all the way back to Alyssa's house. I was convinced that whoever that was a security guard. That is, until they literally tried to pull me under the water. We don't know what to think. There are a few possibilities. Maybe it was just another kid messing with us, maybe it was a security guard who went way too far, or most likely, it was a dangerous person who had ill intent. It was approaching the end of summer, and my friends and I wanted.
Like and subscribe, guys. I'm out. Peace.
We had the genius idea.
Like and subscribe, guys. I want 10,000 likes and subscribers. Oh yeah, let's do this.
Right smack in the middle of a residential area,